What does it mean to be washed in the blood? How can something become pure white if it is washed in red blood? If you're a Christian, did you grow up singing songs about being washed in the blood? Do you remember the song by Lewis Jones? Would you be free from your burden of sin? There is power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you, oh, ere evil a victory win? There is wonderful power in the blood. There is power, power, wonder working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, power, wonder working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Some of you remember it. What does it really mean to be washed in the blood, people? Are we washed in the blood if we say the sinner's prayer? I don't even remember the sinner's prayer. I know that I said it when I was 9, but I have no recollection of it. Are we washed in the blood if we believe that Jesus was born of a virgin, was the Son of God, lived, died, and then rose again? Are we washed in the blood when we get baptized? The name of this message is, Are you washed in the blood? Please stand and cover yourselves for the reading of our scriptures. Now, for those of you who don't know, I've got wires hooked to me and I can't stand. I mean, if I do, I'll rip the wires out and get shocked and scream like a 12-year-old schoolgirl, and it'd be hysterical for you guys, but not so much for me. Anyway, it's not an order and law of God that I stand and that I cover that you do either. But ish. I mean, Yeshua did say when you go to pray, and go in the prayer closet, that'd be this thing, close the door, that would be doing this. Anyway, so it is something that Yeshua and all his Talmudim, that's the guy that Christians call Jesus, and his disciples, they all did this. When they read the scriptures, when somebody prophesied, which was teaching of the law, and when somebody prayed, they covered their head with a tallit, and they proceeded. So here we go. Vayikra, that's known as Leviticus in the Western world, 17, chapter 17, verse 15. It says, Ve'kibes begadav ve'rachatz ba'mayim ve'tamei ad ha'erev ve'taher. Okay, and then our next one is Vayikra, also known as Leviticus. It's chapter 17, verse 16. It's the very next verse. It says, Ve'im lo yekabes u ve'saro lo yir hatz ve'nasa avono. Okay, you may see it. Oops. Got to get that off. See if I the Lamb squad, you know what I'm saying? Our first verse, Vayikra, which is Leviticus 17:15. Now, in the King James, I'm going to use this one because today's message is directly to the Christians who have come to know that Yeshua, or Jesus as they call him, was actually Jewish, and that his name was actually Yeshua, not Jesus. If you don't know how that works out, go to allon.org, allon.org, and read the short little message I have that shows you literally step by step how Yeshua became Jesus. It's simple to follow. You may have to read it 2 or 3 times to make it simple to follow, but you'll get it. So anyway, in the King James, it says, "And every soul that eats that which died," in parentheses, or in, what do you call that? Italics. Is that right? In italics, it says, "of itself." So every soul that eats that which died of itself. In other words, you didn't kill it with your gun or your bow and arrow or your spear, right? It has died of some, maybe it's a natural cause. And then it says, or which was torn, and then they put in italics, with beasts, whether it be, all of that was in italics. And it says, one of your own country or a stranger. Then it says, and this is the important part, this is what we're going to fixate on, he shall both wash his clothes and bathe, they have in italics himself, in water, and be unclean until the even, which of course they mean evening. Then shall he be clean. So first he has to wash his clothes, and he has to bathe himself in water, and he's going to be unclean until the sun goes down. So we start off with Nekibes and wash. Of course, that's from kabas, which is to tread or trample with the feet. What? Well, back in the day, it was to wash garments by treading on them when underwater. Uh, it's more common to see people grab their clothes and they're scrubbing them back and forth, maybe on a rock under the water and that kind of thing, if you're going down there. But in the earlier days, maybe if the garment was larger or whatever, they actually walked on it. They rubbed it with their feet against the rocks to try to get it clean. So that's where this idea of treading on with the feet under the water, because they were trying to clean a garment. It differs from the word rahatz, which is going to come up in this verse, which is to wash the body. So this is very specifically a word used for washing clothing, garments. Garments of any kind. It could be you're washing your bed, you're washing your pillowcase, right? It's cloth is being washed. And then they give an example in the Gesenius from Yeshayahu, that's also known as Isaiah. In chapter 7, verse 3 and chapter 36, verse 2, they talk about a washer of garments who was called at the time a fuller, one who cleanses soiled garments and fulls new ones. So what he does is he pretends that he's going to trample on them with his feet and washes them with his hands, and thus he's fooling, right? Now, Fulls. We don't use this word anymore. It's of a fuller. There's a story in the New Testament about John. Well, it's not in the New Testament. I guess it's in the Nicene Fathers. John is thrown from the pinnacle of the. No, it is in the New Testament, isn't it? He's thrown from the pinnacle of the temple, and he goes down 300 feet. I can't remember if it's New Testament or if it's Nicene Fathers. It must be the Nicene Fathers. But he's thrown the 350 feet-ish from the pinnacle of the temple down to the ground. And he actually survives it because he lands flat on his back. Now, he's not going to live long, but he lands on his back. And in the story, it says that they grabbed a fuller's, what do you call that? It's a stick, a fuller's stick. And that's when they would hang a rug, and they would beat the rug with the stick that was called a fuller's stick, because the fuller was the one cleaning the rug, and he would beat that rug. It says they grabbed the fuller's stick, and they beat John to death. They finished him off, in other words. Interestingly enough, though it may be no more than just folklore, no one knows if the story is true, but they did find, when they started excavating the temple, at the point of where the pinnacle was, right directly below it, they unearthed a fuller's shop that actually had a fuller's stick in the shop. Could have even been the same stick that they beat John with. Probably wasn't, but it could have been. Anyway, so that's what the fuller is. Then it says the gadad, which means clothes, his, or garments, his. It's from the ged. It's a covering, a cloth with which anyone is wrapped. I'm wrapped in this cloth right here. They're talking about this type of thing. Not this specific thing, but this type of thing. Used of the coverings of the bed, so a blanket would be considered that. A sheet would be considered that. A garment, usually the outer garment of the Oriental. And by the way, yes, Israel is in the Orient, and yes, Jews are considered Oriental. But it's also used of deceit and ruin and spoiling. So it's from the root bagad, which is properly to cover. So if something is covered over, it's to act covertly or fraudulently. Are you getting the idea? To cover, to clothe, to dissimulate, to defraud. So it's got all these different shadings of the meaning to it: to oppress, to afflict, to spoil. And then there's a note that Gesenius gave. It said, verbs of covering or hiding are often applied to fraud and deceit. Right, because it's covert, it's covered up. But anyway, here we're literally talking about cloth. Then it says, be rahatz. Now there's that word I said that would wind up, would show up later. It's and bathe. Literally, the in front of the word is bathe. So the word is rahatz. the human body. Metaphorically, the defilement of Torah rebellion, adhering to men. So if you've done something that's against the Torah, that defilement, that sin has adhered to you, you're defiled, you're dirty, you're unclean. So to wash the hands in innocence. You remember someone doing that in the New Testament? Everybody was saying, crucify him, crucify him. He washed his hands in front of everybody and said, this one's on you. I don't think there's any reason to crucify the man myself, right? So that's the idea here. Because he's washing his hands as if he's, this is all coming from the idea of washing the body. And in this case, he was washing his hands in innocence. It's to declare oneself innocent. To wash oneself, to be washed, to wash the body, or to wash the garments. But this one's about the body, where the other one's about the garment. Then it says ba ma yin. So ba is that part of it is added to the word mayim, and that means in or with. Do you remember this? We talked about this just a few weeks ago about being born in Yisrael or being born with Yisrael. This is the same word, and it's a letter that they add to the word to make it do this. So it's in waters. By the way, waters is always in plural because you're probably not going to wash with a single drop, correct? Probably going to take a lot of drops. That makes it waters, not water. Then it's followed with vetame, which is and unclean, literally. It's tame is your word. The vet in front makes it and, so it's and unclean. To be or become unclean, to be polluted, especially used of uncleanness in a Levitical sense, both of persons and animals, touched by something that renders them unclean. And so if you're thinking about New Testament, think about the woman with the issue of blood. Now, she was not supposed to be among the people because her blood made her unclean. And if she's unclean and she touches somebody else, it makes them unclean. And this woman was taking a really big risk because she was in a mob that was going crazy. Everything's, our lights are going on and off, sorry. But she's in this mob that's going crazy and may have beat her to death if they realized what she had done to her, right? So she's taking a big risk here. And she goes in and she grabs the tzitzit, that's the fringe, this thing right here hanging from the corner of his talit. She grabs that because she knew if she could grab the corner of the kanaf, the corner of his talit, which is the fringe, if she could grab this, then she could be healed. She knew that because it's in Malachi, the Son of Righteousness, the Mashiach, when he comes, he'll have healing in the kanaf, in the ring of his talit, right? So she knew that from just knowing a little bit about the Bible. And she was healed. But when she did that, because she was unclean, she made him unclean. And the best part of that, if you're following this sort of thing, is that the next place he goes is to, they call him Jarius. What was his name? I don't remember what his name was. Like it was something like Uriash, and it becomes Jarius. But he's a Nasi, he's a leader of one of the synagogues, and his daughter has died. Well, you can't touch an unclean body, right? Unless you're unclean, because you can't make yourself unclean. But if somebody else makes you unclean, now you have the right to touch an unclean body, just as Yeshua did. So no, he did not break the Torah. There is no place in the New Testament letters where Yeshua broke the Torah. In fact, it says multiple times that he never did. The next word in Hebrew is ad. It just means until. Then we have ha, erev. And so erev is your word, and ha means the, erev, evening. It's evening, the time between sunset and deep twilight. But it's also used of foreigners and strangers. Woo! Remember, this is what's the word I use for this language? Primitive. This is a primitive language. And in primitive languages, they don't tend to have a lot of different words for a lot of different things. They use one word for a lot of different things because there's some connection. Now, the root is arab, which is to set as the sun, which means the sun is departing away. So they say it of people who wander, to draw towards the evening, because they wander and they disappear away like the sun disappears in the evening. So that's why they use this word for foreigners and strangers as well. Not often, though. They have other words for that that are more common, but they did use it that way. So then we have taher, which is and be clean. It's from taher. I keep putting the sound in there that shouldn't be there. Taher. Her. Can't put that R in there. To shine, to be bright, hence to be or to become clean or pure. In a physical sense, as opposed to the filthiness of leprosy, so you got leprosy and you got all the bumps all over you and the white, skinny skin, powdery, dead skin all over you. So you're filthy, right? And then you get healed from it. Well, now you're pure, you're clean, you're shiny. In a Levitical sense, in a moral sense, to be pure, as according to the standards of the Torah. You can't be pure in a biblical sense or a moral sense by biblical standards unless you live according to the Torah. It's that simple. To purify, to wash oneself in water. So here's my somewhat amplified translation of Vayikra. Remember this, Leviticus 17:15. Wash, tread and trample, clean his clothing, and bathe himself in water, and is unclean, polluted, and defiled until the evening. Then he shall be clean. All right, so now we're going to go on to the next verse, and I'm going to look at the King James again, because remember, this one is specifically for the Christians to help them really get a hold of something here. So, we should say 16. And then it says in 16, but if he does not wash nor bathe his flesh, he shall bear his iniquity. So first it's telling him that if he's going to become pure again, he has to wash his clothing and his body. And then in the next verse it says, but if he doesn't bathe his flesh, if he doesn't wash his clothes, he shall bear his iniquity. That's the part we want to focus on. So, ve'im and if, and oh, but behold, I got to get your attention on something here. I want you to know something that's really important. Lo yekabes. So if he doesn't wash, if he doesn't, this that word, the treading out and the trampling, the cleaning, the rubbing the clothes against the rocks and stuff to clean. If he does not wash his clothes, uvesaro, and his flesh, that's from basar. It's this stuff right here. The flesh, it denotes the exterior skin. Metaphorically, the human race is called flesh, a signification which is taken from their flesh, of the flesh of the living body, whether of men or of beasts, or the skin itself, used of the flesh of cattle, which is eaten. So that they even call the muscle flesh, right? So you can just use this word to distinguish the skin, or just the human race, or the muscles under the skin. Hopefully you're getting that. Remember, it's a primitive language, so they're using this one word for a lot of different things. I think I've said enough on that. And then this is low, and if he doesn't, yirchatz. You hear rahatz again? Yes, if he doesn't wash his body. So if he doesn't wash his clothes and he doesn't wash his body, we've already had these. Then it says ve nasa. And literally it's and bear and take up and lift up. It expresses the idea of raising up. To lift up the hand in swearing. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but whatever I decide to tell you. Or in violence, lifting up. So you're lifting up the hands in violence. If you're punching or if you're stabbing or you're shooting, you're lifting up your hands in violence, or you're lifting up your hand in swearing, right? So it's of the lifting up of the hands there. It's of the beckoning someone to come to you. You've lifted up your hands. So lift up your hands in worship. You're lifting up your hands. Hopefully you're getting the idea. It's one who is cheerful and merry because their face is lifted up. It's cheerful. It's merry, right? And they even use it of people who are wealthy because their wallet is lifted. It takes a lot of strength to lift up that wallet, right? No, I'm just kidding. but their amount of money they have has been lifted up. And if they're mighty and they're powerful, their strength has been lifted up. And it's also used to be lifted up from prison, to cause them to go out of prison, because back in that day, prison was underground. It was a dried up well or a dried up cistern, basically a hole that they dug in the ground. And the further they went down, the thinner it became, right? And so when you drop somebody down in there, you drop them with their hands above their head, and if they squirmed around, their ribs would eventually get all caved in there, and they would have trouble breathing. So it was best not to move around when you dropped in like that. Maybe I'll get back to that later. I've talked to you guys about that. It's used of persons of conscience rectitude, cheerful and full of confidence, to lift up the eyes with the verbosity, which is such cases is in Hebrew, to lift the feet, to walk, to lift the voice, to speak, to lift the eyes, to see, to lift the voice in joy or sorrow, to lift up, to take up anything with the voice, as in a song or a prayer. Anyway, I think you guys are getting the picture on this. There's a lot more I could have said. There is one good example in Bereshit, or Genesis 7:17. The waters increased and bore up the ark. Think about it. What lifted up the ark? The water. Because as the water increased, it bore up the ark. So the idea of lifting up is very important here. To lift up one's head, use of someone who is cheerful and merry. To lift up one's own countenance, use of a person that is conscious rectitude, right? I want to make sure I was reading that right. Cheerful and full of confidence, in other words. It is being used in the negative here in this passage, so it's not cheerful or merry. All right, so let's go on to the jail part. So it's the hole in the ground, and it's going toward a V. And when they drop the people in there, they would throw a rock over the top of it. So then you're in complete darkness, utter and complete darkness. And if you got fed, and believe me, that was optional, the jailer did not have the duty to feed you or to give you water, and it wasn't his problem when you needed to go to the restroom. So you were in your restroom, by the way. And so as time went on, the bottom of that pit would begin to fill up with the excrement of those who preceded you. So then your feet were in the miry clay. That should ring a bell for a lot of Christians. Your feet were in the miry clay. But as David said, God pulled him out, because he would have to grab him by the hands, right? Pulled him out of his pit, pulled his feet out of the miry clay, that's excrement, by the way, and set his feet on solid ground. That's what jail was. And so if they fed you, they would move, somebody from your family or friends would move the rock, if they could. They might have to get help, because it would be a big rock. Just on the off chance that you figure out how to get yourself out of this thing. But they would move it, and then all they could do is drop the food or the water down. So you'd have to open up your mouth and catch what you can. The rest of it's going to fall on your shoulders, and the rats are going to eat it. You know what rats do when they're eating, right? Anyway, they use the bathroom. 1 and 2. This is a nasty, horrible place, jail. So jail like this had a tendency to keep crime very low. I'm just saying. Our next word is avono. Iniquity, he. Avon is your word, and it's iniquity. It says perversity and depravity, a depraved action, a crime, a Torah rebellion. In other words, a sin. Now, you got to understand that perversity in the Bible was the best example I know of in the modern world is to say your wife says, "Hey, honey buns, will you hang up this picture right over there?" Well, you can't find your hammer and you want to get it done because the game's about to start. So you go and you grab your screwdriver and you take a little nail and you turn that screwdriver over and you pound that nail into the wall and you hang your picture. Well, what you did was you perverted the use of the screwdriver. It wasn't meant to be a hammer. It was supposed to be a screwdriver, right? That's what perversity is. So something that is used the way that it's not supposed to be used. So when we don't live according to the Torah, we are perverse. That's what the Bible actually is talking about when it calls people perverts, if you will. It never actually calls someone a pervert, but it does say that their actions are perverted. Their actions are not according to the Torah, is what they mean by that. Okay. And you need to know this because sin is transgression against the Torah. And if you don't know this as a Christian, you need to go and look at 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. All right, so here's our somewhat amplified translation. I'm just going to that last part of that verse again. Vaikra, that's Leviticus 17:16. Then he will lift up and carry the weight of his crime. Then he will lift up and carry the weight of his crime. I don't think it's clear enough. If he does not wash himself and his clothing, he is still guilty of his Torah rebellion. That's the first thing you have to know. He's not being forgiven. He still has that filthiness, that dirtiness on him. He will be crushed by the weight of his own iniquity. It will take away his happiness. It will imprison him. He will stay in his pit until he pays the price in full. So let's look at Yagalu. And for Christians who are like, what? It's Revelation. That's the Hebrew word is Yagalu. Revelation 22:14. It says in the King James Version, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. Can you imagine? This is New Testament telling you that you're blessed if you carry out his commandments. And if you do so, that gives you the right to enter in through the gates to his city. That's New Testament. That's Revelation. Oh, maybe we should throw that book out. But listen, this is not what you think it is. Let's look at the words. Our first word in the Greek is makarioi. Makarioi. Like mockery is what it sounds like, but that's not what it is. It means happy, but it's in the plural. It'd be from the word esher. It's happiness says. It's found only in the plural construct. They don't have a singular version of this word in the Bible anyway. It's constructed in plural to give it emphasis. In other words, it is an exclamation point. It is from the root ashar. It is to be straight, right, especially used in a straight way, hence also of what is upright, what is erect, whence comes the signification of firmness and strength, to go straight on, and generally to go, to be successful, to prosper, to be fortunate. It's just like saying happiness is with an exclamation point. Then it says, oi. It's not like oi they. This is a Greek word, oi, so that means they. Then our next word is plunontis in Greek, and it's that are washed. So we have kavas. Remember that? To tread, to trample, to wash clothing. There's your word. And then that's followed by tos, which is the word for the. Then it says stolos. Stoic. You hear it? Stolos, stoa. What does a stoic wear? He wears a stoa. Stolos. That's the word they translated as commandment. Wow, that's incredible coming from Christians, right? Because it means covering, clothing. The thing I've got here, that's what it means. It's beged in Hebrew. It's a covering cloth. Anyone wraps themselves up in. It's the outer garment of the Orientals. We're going to have the word. Then it's so. What was our word preceding that? Was okay, that are washed, or have washed, it should say, that have washed their stoas, their garments. So that do his commandments should have been, happy are those who have washed their clothes, those who have washed their covering. It's very different, isn't it? This isn't about the commandments. This is about what we've been talking about, washing your body and your clothing so that you can become pure. That's exactly what this is talking about. Then it says auton is his, ina means that, estai means may have. It would be for the word hayat, to be, to exist, maybe, will be, was, is, are. It's all those words wrapped up in one thing. Then it says a, which is the. Then it says exousia in Greek. That's right. It would be memshalah in Hebrew, dominion, rule, jurisdiction. It's used of princes and chief rulers. It's from the word mashal. Sounds a lot like mashal. It's from the same root, people. It's to make like, to assimilate, to rule, to have dominion. It's used of lords and rulers and princes, and in a bad sense of tyrants. There was a note in the Jacinius that says, I have no doubt but that from the signification of making life is derived that of judging, forming an opinion, to think, to suppose, to things fit, which is nearly allied to the notion of giving sentence, ordering, or ruling. What did he just say? Remember in what the part of the book that the Christians call the Old Testament, it's in Exodus chapter 11, I believe, where it says, and Abraham was faithful to God, and God counted it to him as righteousness. We're looking at the same thing here. The signification of making is derived that of judging, forming an opinion. It's counted for something. Auton is they, epi is to, then the word to, or to really, is the. Then we have exulon, which is tree. In Hebrew it would be etz. It's tree. It's a tree. It just means tree. Then it says tes, which means of. Zoes. Zoe, life. It would be hayai in Hebrew, to lechaim, to life, right? To live. It's from the root haya, not haya, but haya. We've already had haya, which is to be, to exist. Haya is from life, to live. The original idea of this word is that of breathing, inasmuch as the life of animate beings is discerned by their breathing. If you stop breathing, you don't have life. To continue safe and sound, to live again, to revive. You stop breathing, and someone gave you mouth to mouth, now you're breathing. To recover health, to be healed. It's just said that you're alive again, right? Then it says kai, which is the Greek word for and. Tois means through. Hulosin means gates. It would be patach in Hebrew, an opening, an entrance. Hence, at the entrance of the gate of a city. At the entrance of the gate of a city, and the gate of the town or a village, hence a door of a tent, of a house, of the temple, right? You get it's the entrance. Then it says a seltosi in Greek, which is they may enter. That would be boa, and here, to come in, to enter. So you're going to enter through the gates, right? And that's really all you need to know about that particular word, is just so you enter in. This is ace is in, tain is the Pauline. Enter into the gates of the Pauline, the Ir, the city, a town, said to be so called from being frequented by people. A place fortified with a wall. That's why you'd have to go in through the gate. You're not supposed to be climbing over the wall. You're supposed to go in through the gate of the city. It's use of small fortified places as well as towers and watchtowers and castles and all that kind of stuff. I think you get the idea. So here's the amplified translation of Yugalu, Revelation 22:14. Happy's upright, firm and strong are they who have washed their covering, their clothing, that the dominion of the tree of life may exist in them, so that they enter through the gates in the city. Now, if we look at Yagalu, or Revelation 7:14, it says kai, which means and, eplunan, which means have washed. There's our kavas, the trampling and the scrubbing, washing clothing. Then it says tas, which means the. Stolas, they say robes here. the stolas. Before it was commandments, now it's robes. Because they're getting it right here. It's beged. It's that outer garment of the Orientals. Your blanket, anything that you cover over with. Then it says auton, which means there, kai means and. Then it says Elim kana. I'm not real sure how you pronounce that word for sure. Don't really care. Because in Hebrew it's lavan, which is white. They'll be white. Atas, them. What's the them? The robes will be white. Then it says in Greek. That would be the beth, the in/with word in Hebrew. Then it says toe, which means the. Then it says imati, blood. In Hebrew, it would be dam, like Adam, the human being, mankind, because what? They're made out of blood. The blood is the life source. Dam is the root word of Adam, by the way. It means blood from its red color. Blood is used especially for bloodshed, slaughter, and for guilt contracted by killing. Blood of the grape is used for wine because of the color. Sorry about the lights. In plural, it's blood, especially is shed in slaying, the guilt of slaughter. They use it a lot in terminology when concerning sacrifices. I still say that if we would translate sacrifice as barbecue, Christians would be a lot less scared of Judaism. Because it's really what it is. And then our next word in Greek is tau, which means the. Then we have arniao, lamb, the best, the lamb. So here's the Amplified Translation of Yagalu, the last part of it, 7:14. And have washed their clothing and made them white, purging themselves of Torah rebellion, of sin, in or with the blood of the Lamb. So they've washed their bodies and they've washed their clothing. And in doing so, they have become pure, not because they washed in blood, but because of the blood of the Lamb. So we do our part. We wash our body, we wash our clothing, and then the Lamb is slain, the sacrifice is made. And because the sacrifice is made, when the evening comes, we are pure. That's what they're saying. Washed in or with the blood is a Hebrew idiom, meaning that we live our lives by the law of God. If you are washed in the blood, it means you are Torah observant. Let's talk about entering into a covenant, because it's really important for you to understand this, especially if your hair is standing on the back of your neck right about now. When two men came together to set up a covenant, could be a man and a woman, could be two women, could be two men. It made no difference. And two people came together to make a covenant. First thing that they had to do was set the terms of the covenant. If we entering into this covenant means that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do, thou shalt not. Those are the terms of the covenant. This is what you can expect from me. This is what I expect from you. This is what you will do. This is what I will do. This is what you won't do. This is what I won't do. All of that are the terms of the covenant. Now, once that's set up and they write it all down, because it had to have a witness, the written portion of it is not the covenant. It is the witness of the covenant. So now, to institute the covenant that has now been written and has its witness, they're going to cut up animals. And that's just, it's a barbecue, people. They call it a sacrifice, but it's a barbecue. This is how we know what animals and how many and how much of it has to be sacrificed. Because if you've got 20 people on the one side of the covenant and 40 people on the other side of the covenant, you're not going to sacrifice a single lamb. That's not enough food. You sacrifice enough animals to feed everybody who's going to eat of the sacrifice. That's how you have enough. Then, once they cut up the animals, before they cooked them, they cut them up. Then what they did in the very ancient of times was the person that was called The person who initiated the covenant was called the stronger partner. He had no stronger position in it. And well, there are probably times that he did, but there would have been times that he didn't. The initiator of the covenant was called the stronger partner. Remember, this is a primitive language, so they use words in many different ways, right? One word for many different things. This is why this came about. So then you have the one who accepts the covenant is called the weaker partner. That's all it was. It had nothing to do with the strength of either one or the position of either one. That's Western thought being forced into something that doesn't belong there. So, but the one who initiated, the stronger partner, would walk between the animals. And if that person was excited about this, would scoop up the blood and literally wash himself. He would just splash it all over himself, right? And then, once he passed through the pieces, the acceptor of the covenant, the weaker partner, would go through. And if that person was excited, more scooping of blood and splashing on self, right? Um, that's what we call being washed in the blood. Yes, that's what being washed in the blood really came. That's where it came from. The signification of this, and you can find this in the Jusinius. This actually says this in the Jusinius. May the same thing happen to me that happened to that animal if I break this covenant. This is why the wages of sin, of Torah rebellion, the wages of sin is death. It is a blood covenant. Now let's go back to 1 Yohanan. I spoke of it earlier. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. 1 John chapter 3, verse 4. Everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah. I know that yours says law. Mark it out and write Torah, right? Because the law is the Torah. Everyone who commits sin is also in rebellion of the Torah, comma, because sin is Torah rebellion. Sin is Torah rebellion. If you don't live by the Torah, you are living in Torah rebellion. If you don't live by the Torah, you are living in sin. And even the New Testament says, for we know that God does not hear sinners. Sin is transgression of the Torah, the law. It is the breaking of your covenant. Because the covenant is where the, how did I put that? The terms, the witness, the Torah is the witness of the covenant. And that witness has the terms, what you will and will not do, how you will and will not live, what you will or will not say. It's all in there. And if you're not doing that, you have a broken covenant, or maybe no covenant at all. Over 80% of the people in the United States today claim to be Christians. But the vast majority of them are unhappy. They fight with anxiety, depression, mood swings, bitterness, anger, sadness, disappointment, apathy, and a host of other negative feelings. There is an old joke in Christian circles. It does not matter which denomination you are a part of. You simply fill in the blank with your choice of denomination. It goes like this. You can always tell who the blanks are. Okay, so the blanks are going to be, the Pentecostals, the Baptists, the Methodists, the whoever, right? You can always, so I'm going to pick on the Pentecostals. You can always tell who the Pentecostals are by the frowns on their faces. It's an old joke, but all too true, all too much at the time. Why is everybody so unhappy? Why does so much of the people in Christianity live this way? Well, they've been sold a bill of goods. They've been told that all they have to do is believe that Jesus was born of a virgin, lived, died, and rose, and if they truly believe this, they are saved, sanctified, and going to heaven no matter how they live out the rest of their lives. They have been told that God's law passed away, which means that they now live in the age of grace. So their Torah rebellion, their sin, doesn't count anymore. That's what they've been told. And you know what? For the Jews who may be listening, you have the same problem. You've been told that the Torah was given at Sinai, and that the oral law was given also at Sinai, though there's no evidence or proof of it whatsoever. It did not exist before the Dark Ages, by the way. They've been trying all kinds of flowery ways to push it further back, but it simply didn't. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. I'm saying that wrong. You have the beginnings of the oral law as early as about 150 years before Yeshua was born, before Jesus was born. The beginnings of it are there. It's in pretty much full swing by the time Yeshua is a rabbi, but it doesn't get written down until the 400s AD. So you're talking quite some time after he's gone, right? 350 years after he's gone, somebody finally starts to write it down. And then by the time you get to the Dark Ages, this thing is blown up into something you can't believe. But what they were already beginning to teach in the first century, at the time of Yeshua, Jesus, was that the oral law was given to well, they weren't teaching this part, but they were teaching that the oral law trumped the written. And that's what all of this argument between Yeshua and the Pharisees was. In that the Pharisee said we live by the written or the oral, and Yeshua said you live by the written. And nothing trumps the written. That was the argument. It was not that the Jews are bad and the Christians are good. The Christians didn't even exist. They didn't. There is no connection of the church to the first century. It comes after Constantine. In fact, the church, the Protestant part of the church, didn't exist until the 1500s. 1500s. You get the earliest beginnings of the Protestant movement in about the 1200s, but not before. Before that, it was all Catholicism. Catholicism did not spring from the Bible. It did not spring from Judaism. It sprang from Jewish philosophers who did not speak Hebrew at all, using the Jewish Tanakh, which the Christians now call the Old Testament, and using the letters written by the followers of Yeshua, the followers of Jesus, those letters. They used the Greek versions of that to teach their philosophy. And from that arose a religion called Catholicism. It was not called Catholicism until the mid-400s. They did not have a pope until the mid-400s. So, yes, it started with Constantine, but it didn't even have a name or a leader until the mid-400s. And so all of that stuff that you read about where they came from and all that nonsensical stuff about the day of Pentecost and all that is utterly made up. There's no truth to it. So, but with the Jews, you have this problem with, okay, now all of a sudden you've got this oral law that's brand new in the time of Yeshua, and they're saying, oh, it trumps the written. So they've done the same exact thing. The Torah has passed away and it has been replaced with this new thing. Now, Jews basically won't agree with that, but it's exactly the same thing. It is exactly where the philosophers got the idea for the old passing away and the new taking its place. Because it never said old covenant, new covenant. It said old sacrifice, new sacrifice. The fact that the English dictionaries and stuff kept going further and further away from the idea of sacrifice and kept pushing the idea of covenant doesn't change what Bechrit or Bech, yes, that's the right word. I thought I would say the wrong word for a minute there. But Bechrit means sacrifice. If you can't have a sacrifice, there's no reason to have a sacrifice without a covenant. That's the whole point. It all goes together. It's all the same thing. So God did say to Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah that there would be a new sacrifice. Not a new covenant, a new sacrifice. But by the time you get to the time of Yeshua, you've got so many Jews who know so little about ancient Hebrew thought. They've come up in the Hellenized world. That whole area, the whole Judea is Hellenized by this time. I'm guessing that the vast majority of the Jews in that area didn't speak Hebrew. The majority. didn't speak Hebrew. So they already thought like the Western mind because their language was Greek and it was Western, abstract to the nth degree. So you got the same thing. The Torah passed away in that the New Testament, I mean, the oral law, I did that on purpose, took its place. It's where the Christians got this idea. It passed away. They're saying everyone's living by grace and nobody has to do what God says anymore. Because living by the Torah is doing what God says. I'm sorry, my mouse has stopped working. I have to. Well, that's not good. Wow. Yeah. Sorry, folks. My battery has absolutely died on me here, right in the middle of things. Give us a second. Yeah, it's one of them really, really little ones, the AAA. Still not seeing my mouse. Oh, maybe it's still. No, I can't use a different mouse. Wow. You can go up there and press the down arrow, just like tap on it, try to keep up with me. I've lost control of my screen here. Yeah, it does. Oh, you're gonna have to click on it. Move your finger on the mouse pad. Okay, you're gonna have to reach behind it and pull the mouse thing out. Of course, it could just be frozen up for all I know. Well, I don't know. The light's not coming on this either. Well, sorry everybody. Give me a second to see what I can do about this. Oh man, how am I gonna do this? I'm gonna have to turn the sound off, so because I'm gonna have to disconnect here. Sorry, everybody. Had to completely go through a complete reboot. My machine is like 40,000 years old in computer years. Had to just wait for it. All right, picking back up where we left off. What? They've been told they can live their lives any way they choose, free of guilt from God's law, which is His Torah, which is our covenant with Him. Christianity has come to believe that if they are good people, it does not matter what they have done or what they have not. When they get to heaven, God is going to say, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter into the joys of your Lord." Well done. What did they do? Faithful servant. Faithful to what? Christianity now teaches that God's law, His Torah, our covenant, is legalism and bondage. It has not always been this way, though. But consider this. Helping our neighbor get his ox out of the ditch is not legalism. It is basic human kindness. All of God's law is basic human kindness. Think about what Christianity is bought into. Most Christians now believe that they only have to live by the Ten Commandments, but they do not believe that they have to keep the Sabbath. I guess it is because they do not know that keeping the Sabbath is number 4 of the 10. Christianity has come to believe that not going to church is acceptable because of all the hypocrites, in spite of the fact that their New Testament tells them not to forsake the assembling together of the saints. Thus, if they forsake the assembling together of the saints, they themselves become hypocrites. And think about this. Which is better? To spend a few hours one week, spend a few hours one day per week with hypocrites, or to spend all eternity with them. Much of Christianity is perfectly fine with being rude to rude people, even though their New Testament tells them not to return evil for evil. Why is the countenance of so many in Christianity so downcast? Why have so many Christians left the church? Is it because of all the money-grubbing televangelists? No. Money-grubbing wolves in sheep's clothing have always been around. Always. The reason is simple, though. Christianity is bearing the weight of her iniquity. They are being crushed by it. They can only take it for so long. Then they break and become convinced that the church, or worse yet, that God Himself let them down. Where do you stand? Are you living your life under the weight of your Torah rebellion? Or are you living the abundant life that our covenant is supposed to give us? Are you being crushed by the weight of your iniquity? Or are you living by the rules laid out by our covenant? Have you washed your clothes and your body? Are you free from your Torah rebellion? Are you washed in the blood? Shalom, shalom.